Good morning all. Welcome you back to the course of disaster management. I hope everybody is staying safe at homes. Coming to the macroeconomic management and sustainable development, which is our topic. I hope by the end of this discussion, everybody of you will be able to analyze the need of macroeconomic management and the role of sustainable development in reducing the risk encountered due to a disaster. First of all, we will see what are the definitions of macroeconomics and sustainable development. And next, later on, we will analyze the need for this macroeconomic management in the time of disasters. The first one being the macroeconomics. It is nothing but quite opposite to the microeconomics. And it is the economics which is at a broader extent by considering a nation as a unit. Now, if you carefully see the microeconomics, which you might have already studied in your school level, which deals with the basic factors of production, the demand supply chain, and the other factors which do affect the price of a commodity, the purchasing capability of a family, of a single individual. These are all parts of microeconomics, which you might have dealt in your school life. On the other hand, macroeconomics is a branch which looks at the big picture, just like country as a unit. So it considers all different segments, while microeconomics considers only one particular segment. It majorly focuses on the broad areas of the employment rate in the country, the GDP, the inflation levels, and the national economy. So it looks at environmental and also external levels. As you can see in the slide there, macroeconomics is the branch of economics that studies the behavior and the performance of an economy as a whole. And it focuses on the aggregate changes in the economy such as unemployment, growth rates, GDP, and inflation. See the picture there on the right side. If you see the study of the economy as a whole, which is considered to be the macroeconomics, see the most important terms are national output, national income, unemployment in the country, etc. So, what is the role of this macroeconomic management during the time of disasters? We will consider the case of COVID-19, which is having a major impact in the economics of all the countries all across the globe. So macroeconomic management is nothing but how the GDP is varying, how the inflation rate is varying, and how this growth rate and how the people are losing the jobs during this type of pandemics or disasters. Now, on the other hand, there is another word called as sustainable development. As you might have seen in our unit number 2 of the course, sustainable development is nothing but organizing principle for meeting the human development goals, while at the same time maintaining the stability in the nature or the environment. So, what it means that without disturbing the environment or the natural systems, which provide us the necessary resources for our living, without disturbing them, how better you are living, how better you are achieving your development goals. That is what is sustainable development is. I'll take a small example here. I'm not against any particular state or any particular country. Now, if we take the mining, which is actually scheduled in case of one is in Nallamala forest. The mining is being done for the uranium resources. The other one is in the Vizag area, where the mining is being done for the bauxite ore. In these two cases, there was a huge objection from the local people and from the environmentalists that this sort of minings should be prohibited in these eco areas, because this Nallamala forest and Vizag area, the forest area, these are home to several ecosystems, several animals and trees, which are particular to these particular areas. They have been there for very long durations. So if you start disturbing these ecosystems just for the sake of mining of these uranium and bauxite ores, then it is going to give a very wrong message, or it is going to disturb the ecosystems. So sustainable development is that which is to achieve your goals, your development goals, by not disturbing the nature. So the same is mentioned there. If you see the right side picture there, environment, economic and social, these three are the broader pictures. A country is supposed to grow economically, and all the social statuses and all the social needs of the people should be met, but at the same time the environment also should be protected. So if we consider that these three different areas which we are supposed to concentrate, then the intersection of these three areas is going to give us a solution for the sustainable development, which means that you are supposed to meet the economic needs, social needs, without disturbing the environment. That is what is sustainable development is. See the second point there. The desired result is the state of society where living conditions and resource uses continue to meet human needs without undermining the integrity and stability of the natural system. So it is sustainable development. It is basically classified as the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations. Now, after having learned about these two terms, one is a macroeconomics, which is nothing but the economics of a country, which means economics on a larger scale, and the sustainable development, which means the development needs, attaining the development needs, the development of a human person or a human resource or human mankind, attaining the development of human mankind without disturbing the nature and natural ecosystems. So after learning these two definitions, now we will move on to the introduction to this macroeconomic management. Now, if you see, to achieve the sustainable development, all the countries across the globe, they are framing up some policies and they are striving hard to get a sustainable development. And these policy initiatives to achieve this sustainable development, they are majorly looked over and they are majorly done by keeping these natural disasters in mind. So one or the other, all these policy initiatives, these are being influenced by the natural disasters in most of the developing countries. And the effective approaches to these sustainable developments, these are needed to coordinate the efforts to minimize the impact of natural disasters. This is the most important thing. Unless you do have a coordination of the efforts, we cannot minimize the impact of the natural disaster in attaining this sustainable development. And on the other hand, the disaster characteristics, as we have seen in our unit 1, because some of the disaster characteristics are we don't know how much time they will be staying on, we don't know when they are going to come, we don't know how much damage they will create. So these are the characteristics of the disaster. So all these disaster characteristics and the macroeconomic and human development levels, these are basically interrelated. If the human development levels, what we call it as HDLs, if these are higher, then the impact of the disaster will be very, very low. and the economy will immediately get a quicker recovery after the disaster. Now the question arises, what do you mean by human development level? We will see it in the later on. So the higher HDLs always lessen the impact of the disaster and also ease the recovery of the economy. And as we can see, the countries which have experienced very heavy devastations, very heavy damages because of the natural disasters, they won't be able to compete with the global economies. Because the disasters, they constrain, they hinder the developments in mainly two particular ways. One, they directly affect the economic activities. See, the present case of COVID-19. See, for the betterment of human race and for stopping of this COVID-19, the countries all over the world, they are making it mandatory, the social distancing, and most of the countries, they are forcing the lockdowns of the entire countries. Now, if you see the disaster and the action being taken, now this disaster, particularly the COVID-19, after its lockdown, you can see the economic development is hindering. Even most of the surveys and the World Bank reports and each and everything, they say that the economic progress of the countries who are experiencing a lockdown is going to hinder. So that's what we say. Disasters, they will affect the economic activities. And the level of macroeconomic parameters and the human development indicators, they play a vital role in determining the impact of the disaster losses. That's what we will see in later on. And the last point, the most important one, disasters are not natural things, but they are the final effect of the collision of natural hazards with vulnerabilities and exposures. Now, this is the sentence which you are supposed to understand very clearly. See, the earthquake or the cyclone or this COVID-19, these are hazards. They are not creating anything directly unless there are any vulnerabilities and exposures. See, if you take an island where there are no persons, where there is no vegetation, and if a cyclone occurs there, then it is not considered to be a disaster. Why? Because there is no vulnerability and nobody is exposed there. So, as long as the vulnerabilities are high, as long as there is more amount of exposure, then only this hazard will create a disaster. So, hazard is nothing but what is coming, the big picture. Disaster is nothing but how much is being affected. Now, if there is nothing there on empty island, that is not considered to be a disaster. Even if an earthquake happens also, nothing is going to burn. But if a country like India, where there are more number of vulnerabilities, you take an example of this vulnerabilities. There are different types of people living in there. Some people are too rich, some people are very poor. There are different vulnerabilities. And all these people will be exposed to any such sort of pandemics or epidemics or a disaster or a hazard. Even a small hazard also will affect millions of population here in our country. In this case, even a small thing also will be picturized as a big disaster. So that's why the last sentence is, disasters are not natural. It's just the vulnerabilities and exposures which makes them a big disaster. So I will keep an end for this one now. So what we have learned so far, we have gone through this. What is the definition of macroeconomics and what is the definition of sustainable development, and we have seen what is the introduction to disasters and the macroeconomic management. In the next class, we will see how the disaster impacts are evaluated. Thank you for now.